Okay, today being the glorious disappearance day anniversary of Srila Prabhupada, we will sing Ye Nila Premadana. Thank you, Prabhu. And then we'll read some things from a special issue of the Bhakti Godhead magazine that was put out right after Prabhupada's disappearance. Doing too many things, you have to be patient with me when I find this. Okay. Okay. Hare Krishna. Okay, that's your favorite key? Yeyanilo premadana karuna prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur Kota Gela Charya Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kahadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kaha Bhatta Juga Kaha Kabira Mata Yuga Eka Kali Kota Gela Goranataraj Bashane Kuti Bo Mata Anale Pashibo Goranga Gunera Nidhi Kotangele Pabo Se samba sangira sangue je koi lombilas Se sangana paya kande narotamada
Jaya Nilo Premadana Koruna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chaya Thakur Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality as Srinivasacharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So, give me a second to get organized here. Okay. So on this 11th day of November, 2018, the disappearance day of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, I'd like to read a little bit from this special issue of the Back to Godhead magazine. Just a little personal note. During that last year, I think there's two of us here who remember that last year, 1977, throughout the year there were intimations, constant reports of how Prabhupada's health is not doing so well, and amazingly in September, before the November that he passed away, he took a trip to London. Everyone was amazed that he could do that in the state he was in. That was very incredible for those who are European devotees. They all flocked to London to see Prabhupada. He wasn't speaking very much. He had these dark glasses. He couldn't see very well. And he was heading toward Gitanagari. He had said that 50% of my work is not done, finished. I want to establish Varnashram. And the devotees were expecting him to go to Gitanagari, but he had a health crisis and he went back to Vrindavan. And so we had heard, I was sitting in Los Angeles working on Back to Godhead magazine, and our editor-in-chief was Satsvarup Das Goswami, who was, that whole year, he would go to Vrindavan, and because we'd heard Prabhupada is very ill, he may pass away, he would fly in, and then he didn't come back, fly out and come back, fly. So he went through, I don't think he was there actually on the day, but we heard that Prabhupada wanted all the devotees to come, or many devotees to come. Actually, he said all my devotees should come to Vrindavan, but that wasn't reported, so as many as possible could go. So I'm busy with working in Back to Godhead magazine and writing the captions for the Science of Self-Realization, which was the last book published during Prabhupada's time, although I don't think he actually saw it. So what happened was that eventually, probably late October, I appealed to Ramaswar and I said, look, why don't you send myself and Mandaleshwar, who was my co-editor at the time, send us to Vrindavan. And we can put out we had a double issue, we put out the double issue, next issue, whatever, so that way we wouldn't have to be on this. So he agreed, but there was all these delays. So finally we got on the plane, myself and Mandaleshwar, on like November 12th, 1977. Usually takes maybe a day or something to get there. There was a bomb scare on the plane, and it landed instead of landing in Heathrow and then changing to go to Delhi, we landed in Ireland at Shannon Airport or something like that, and there was a whole day's delay while they checked that airplane to see if there's a bomb on it. So that put us on, you know, a day late, too late. So we ended up arriving in Bombay on the 16th, and one devotee couldn't even speak, gave us a telegram and said Prabhupada disappeared 2 days earlier. So we were all teary and everything. We made our way to Vrindavan, and we were there for the big festival that had taken place. They invited everybody in Vrindavan to come and take prasadam. Huge woks, 14 feet wide or something, all it's cooking all day. And then they had a meeting with any of Prabhupada's godbrothers who were there, and all the senior sannyasis and everything from ISKCON, all speaking about Prabhupada in the evening. It went on for hours. And then the next day we took Prabhupada's murti. The first murti that Lochan made was a small one, brass, very exquisite, and he was using that as the model to make the big one that was eventually put in the Samadhi tomb. Took Prabhupada around Govardhan. There's this whole pastime where Prabhupada wanted to go Govardhan Puja was just happening. He wanted to go around Govardhan. And the doctor said he was so fragile, he hadn't been eating for months, you know, skin and bones, and they said he won't last more than 15 minutes with the rough roads and the shaking and everything. So there was whole pastime. Eventually, some devotees said, no, Prabhupada orders you can go, he's transcendental, he can do anything. And Bhavananda and one other devotee, Tamal, I think, appealed to Prabhupada, tearfully, Prabhupada, you know, causing so much pain, we don't want you to pass away. So he said he agreed not to go. So he didn't go on that. So after he disappeared, there was a huge procession taking Prabhupada around Govardhan with that murti, you know. I remember that. So anyway, everyone was in shock. I mean, it was just like, what's going to happen now? You know, no one really knew what was going to happen. Everyone expected Prabhupada to finish the Bhagavatam, which would have taken years, actually. He only got through, well, he got through 13 chapters of the 10th canto. And there was still a whole 77 chapters, 10th canto, 31 chapters, 11th canto, and 13 chapters of the 12th canto. Anyway, that was it. And so Jayavaita Maharaj was not the editor of the BTG at that time, but he spoke to Satsvarup Maharaj, and they decided to put out a special issue about Prabhupada, which of course was, and that came out in '78. It was a double issue, January-February issue, and here's the cover of it. In those days, we were printing 750,000 magazines a month. So I'd like to read a little bit. First thing is this dedication, which is very nice. Around the turn of the century, that was when the 19th century became the 20th century, around the turn of the century, the great spiritual master, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, made this prediction. Soon there will appear a personality who will preach the holy name of Lord Krishna all over the world. As we have witnessed for the past 12 years, that personality was His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Throughout his life, Srila Prabhupada prepared himself for his great mission. And from his arrival in America on September 18th, 1965, to his passing on November 14th, 1977, through some 70 books and thousands of letters, interviews, and lectures, he gave the world the holy names of Krishna and the Vedic science of self-realization. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also wrote a short stanza about the influence that a Vaishnava, a pure devotee of the Lord, carries in this world even after his passing. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. So while it's natural for us to be sorrowful that Srila Prabhupada has passed away, we can know for sure that he will never pass away, for he is living still and sound. As he himself said, I will never die, I will live forever in my books. In the days and years to come, may everyone come to remember Srila Prabhupada in the same way that he remembered his spiritual master. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Nice intro. So there's I won't read this whole magazine, which could take hours, but the first article is by Prabhupada, as it always is, and here he's going through the samsara prayers, and he gives an explanation of who the real spiritual master is. And here's a nice article by Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari at the time, in which he reviews the gifts that Srila Prabhupada gave us, and I'd like to go through those, just to summarize. So the first gift is the Hare Krishna mantra, and he recalls here how Prabhupada began the movement that way. You know, the famous kirtans in Tompkins Square Park and in the Bowery. Nobody had any books. You know, maybe a few had books that Prabhupada came with, the Delhi Bhagavatams, we called them. But basically it was just Prabhupada and the mantra, whatever he could teach from the Vyasa-san. So he would have a lot of chanting. They would chant for at least an hour. The first kid, he'd walk in and there's no madanga. You know, I guess there's no cartel. He had this little half of a bongo drum. I used to play the bongo drums. So you take and you just play it. You know, you play it for hours like this. This is, I think, picture of him, video of him playing that in Tompkins Square. So he'd sing like for a whole hour. And then, you know, and at that time, there was a lot of experimentation going on, not just with drugs, but also with different states of consciousness and yoga, and all of this was churning around. So he had a good audience, as best you could hope, in the West, in that crowd in the Lower East Side, which was one of the places where the 60s, you know, the culture, the New Age was born. And so, you know, there eventually Michael Grant walked in, you know, who came with Mukunda Maharaj, and he was a musician. There were a lot of musicians out there, you know, playing. And he was so fascinated by it, and he talked to Prabhupada. He was very impressed. And he was the one who agreed to who took the initiative and went out and got the 26th Avenue place. It was for rent. So, but the Hare Krishna mantra was first, middle, and last. I mean, that was always a central part of Prabhupada's gift to us. And he taught both the congregational chanting and, of course, the japa chanting when he had some serious followers. And those two together was and is the driving force. The chanting is the driving force of this movement. So he ends here. Wherever Prabhupada went on 14 journeys around the globe, he constantly spread the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And when he finally departed, he was surrounded by loving disciples from around the world, loudly yet sweetly chanting these names of God he had given them. He began his movement by chanting Hare Krishna, and when he left, Hare Krishna were the last words he spoke. This was Srila Prabhupada's mission. Let the chanting of Lord Krishna's holy name be glorified. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Now the next gift, of course, is all the books Srila Prabhupada gave. And he calls a Vedic library of transcendental knowledge. When Prabhupada came, when he was contemplating coming, why did he come? Well, he had been ordered by a spiritual master. When he first met him in 1922, Prabhupada was newly married. I think he had one child, little baby, and more on the way. And he was just starting his work with the laboratory, the pharmaceutical laboratory. And he was a strong advocate of Mahatma Gandhi's movement, you know. So his father was a pure devotee. He often, you know, he dedicated, I think, Krishna book to Gaur Mohan Day. And he was so pious that he would invite any sadhus who were walking around begging from home to home. He would invite them in and feed them and give them some donation like that. So Prabhupada, growing up, he'd seen many sadhus. But many of them he saw, as he got older, were kind of sadhus in name only. You know, they would put on the sadhu cloth, go around begging, and put on their regular clothes and smoke bidis and things like that. So Prabhupada was a little reluctant when his friends said, "Oh, you should come see this very nice sadhu who's moved into the neighborhood, Ultadanga Road." They had gotten this building downtown, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Prabhupada was like arguing with his friend, you know, I've seen them all, you know. So finally he prevailed upon Prabhupada to come and he went up to the roof. And there was Bhaktisiddhanta. He was very tall, so he was sitting there erect, you know, and he had his disciples around him. And Prabhupada, you know, actually offered obeisance. Before he even got up and settled himself, Bhaktisiddhanta was saying, I guess in Bengali, why don't you, you're intelligent, educated young men, why don't you preach Krishna consciousness, Krishna bhakti all over the world? Prabhupada was kind of taken aghast. It was a little, he hadn't even, and then there was a, you know, he was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi, so he objected. How will anyone take us seriously? We're still dependent, you know, we have to get independent first. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, no, you can't wait. It's the most important thing. So Prabhupada, he liked to recount how he was defeated, and he liked it. He liked being defeated. He was never defeated by anyone else. So that's very first instruction. And later on, he met his Bhaktisiddhanta several times, and he told him, if you ever get money, print books. This went deep into Prabhupada's heart. And then right at the end, when Bhaktisiddhanta was about to leave his body at the end of 1936, Prabhupada wrote him another letter in, I think, the beginning of December or something. He was a householder then living in Bombay, I believe. He said, you have so many sannyasi disciples who are doing so much service for you. I'm, entangled in all this business and stuff. How can I serve you? How can I serve you? So he wrote him a letter, which that was the last letter he probably wrote practically. He left his body, Bhaktisiddhanta, on the 1st of January 1937, I believe, in Jagannath Puri. So Prabhupada got this letter. Maybe he had already left his body. And he reiterated that same instruction. You should preach in English. You should travel, because he had already tried to send some sannyasis out. They'd gone to London, couldn't do anything, and came back, which is a big disappointment. They had all the institution behind them. They had money behind them. There was a special book that had been written. Dr. Sanyal had written his book, Lord Chaitanya and His Teachings or something. And he was like very nicely written in English, based on mostly Chaitanya Bhagavatam, like that. And Bhaktisiddhanta had written a very glowing introduction to it, So all of they had all, but they didn't have what Prabhupada had, which was they didn't have Prabhupada. So they came back. So Prabhupada took that to heart, the final instruction, plus Lord Chaitanya's prediction that my name will be chanted in every town and village. So the history was that over the years, Prabhupada tried like anything to do it in India. He was preaching in English, started Back to Godhead in 1944, and periodically published, and he took Vanaprastha. Where was it, in 57, 56? No, that was with his sannyas. Anyway, a few years earlier, he left his home because his wife was not cooperating with the preaching and everything. And eventually, he worked with the Gaudiya Math. The Gaudiya Math was established, but after Bhaktisiddhanta disappeared, it started to splinter, and so it was very painful. Prabhupada did a lot on his own. So eventually, he decided to, once he had the books published, it took him years. Started in the end of like 58 or 9, started translating, but he's doing it all himself. He had no, proofreaders, editors, composers, and all that. He doing it himself. So it took him years, up to 1965, to publish those 3, early 65. Finally, he had those books, the 3 volumes of the first canon. And then, getting out of India, getting a sponsor, which came, all these things came. And Prabhupada was able to come to America, but he always remembered Bhaktisiddhanta's injunction, if you ever get money, print books, and he saw by example how Bhaktisiddhanta so much used the printing press to distribute Krishna conscious literature. So that was called the Brihad Madanga. The individual kirtan has to go on with the individual Madanga. But it's always limited in scope. But the books go everywhere, and so Prabhupada was very keen to. And during his lifetime, he published so many volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita came out in 1968, actually, in an abridged version, and 72 in the unabridged. And then was the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, based on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And then the Chaitanya Charitamrita itself, and Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Ishopanishad, so many small books, some lectures. There's a whole library of books. So the Vedic library of transcendental knowledge. And Jayaveda Maharaj writes, to a world afflicted by a lack of spiritual knowledge and plagued by sentimental, vague, flimsy ideas of wisdom and truth, Prabhupada's books offer the rigorously consistent, all-conquering, deeply rewarding, transcendental philosophy of the Vedic literature. And the TLC, when I worked on the TLC, I revised it, brought a lot of it back to what it had been when it first came out. It was like the first book that perfectly came out. There were no diacritics. There's no manuscript. It was just because Prabhupada really didn't know if he was going to get to the CC. That wasn't part of the plan, and he really wanted those teachings of Lord Chaitanya to be available. So in the beginning, there's something called Lord Chaitanya's mission, which is basically the Shikshastika. But there's a little introductory paragraph which says, due to the unbreakable disciplic succession, the writings of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition are the most consistent and comprehensive of all Vedic literature, all religious literature in the world. Now, the first editor, when he revised it, there was a revision during Prabhupada's time in 1974 with his okay, and they added all kinds of verses from the CC, although the CC wasn't out yet. That came out in 75. But they had access. But he softened that. He took out that part of all. He just said it's very consistent, but he didn't say of all the religious traditions in the world. So I restored that. Prabhupada was following in his spiritual master's footsteps as a lion guru. So Prabhupada's books are unique because they present the Vedic literature as it is without personally motivated interpretations. Consequently, his books, apart from their immense scholarly and literary value, offer one the opportunity to understand and actually attain the perfection of self-realization and ultimately realize the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, and see him face to face. So this is, I remember during that period, you know, when we were hearing about Prabhupada's declining health, Prabhupada was emphasizing this idea of Vani and Vapu, that the physical manifestation of all of us, even the spiritual master, eventually disappears. You don't have that opportunity for personal relation. And when you do have it, you should take it every moment you can get, no question. But the words of the spiritual master are always there, both in the book form, of course. We have so many recordings. And that's how he lives on. And that's how you can take association, even today. That's why before every Bhagavatam class, and I say, Om Jnana Timanandasya, I say, you know, my spiritual master, I offer my obeisance to all members of Sri Parampara, and to Srila Prabhupada, who was our spiritual master. I'm not just saying a royal we, me. All of us should feel that we have that connection with Prabhupada through his movement, through his devotees, and especially through his books and his words. And by studying them, we really imbibe his, not just the philosophy, but his mood of preaching, and we were able to associate closely. So that's, the two most important gifts are the Mahamantra and the books. And then the society of the next one, distribution of Vedic knowledge. And he talks about how Prabhupada emphasized so much and pushed book distribution. That wasn't always feasible at the beginning. There were hardly any books. Devotees didn't know how to distribute. They would go out and distribute BTG, Back to Godhead, which was, according to Prabhupada's words, the backbone of the movement when they were going out by the hundreds. When I was in L.A. in the mid-70s, that was 75, that was still the main book distribution. There was a devotee named Gautama, who was a black-bodied devotee. He was built like a linebacker, which he actually was in college. He was headed to the NFL. Yeah, but he had an injury. And knew that injury has sidelined him, and doing that sidelining, he read one of Prabhupada's books. So he comes to the movement, but he's very determined, you know, athletes in general and football players. So he went out and he would distribute hundreds of BTGs a day. He would go to the airport, he'd distribute all these BTGs. So, but then, I think it was maybe in December or November of 1976, I think it was, where Prabhupada was on a morning walk and he said something like, but what really pleases me is when my hardback books are distributed. And boom. That was, not that BTG distribution stopped, but it like fell off a cliff, and everybody wanted to distribute, you know, the hardback books. So, but one way or another, Prabhupada was pushing that book distribution, and how it developed, you know, the miraculous early days when devotees didn't know how they were going to distribute. They went out and somehow or other they distributed. And it started in California, in Southern California, Northern California, and spread all over the world. And devotees found that they could actually distribute Prabhupada's books. And Prabhupada was ecstatic, because that means you didn't have to have some, you know, business going on, or devotees working here or there, try to bring in enough Lakshmi. And all that money, a lot of it went to India to purchase the land and building materials for the Vrindavan temple and the Bombay temple and the Mayapur temple. So really it was you know, Prabhupada would say, this is our business. This is our family business. You know, really, if you can do it. So that's mentioned here, the society of devotees. Some of Prabhupada's earliest disciples recall that in '66, when Prabhupada newly arrived in New York, he first began holding classes in Old Loft in Bowery. He had a small handwritten sign downstairs near the mailbox, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. I didn't know. I thought it started in when he founded it. In those days, the society was not very extensive. Very extensive. It was at one place in Bowery. Practically speaking, there was only Prabhupada himself. But where others may have seen only an elderly Indian Swami and a few young men coming to hear him, Prabhupada, with his usual transcendental vision, saw the hope for an international society of devotees that could spread all over the world. And indeed, you know, it spread to California, you know, to San Francisco, and then Montreal, Boston, like that somehow. And then by Prabhupada's constant preaching and his purity and the potency of what he gave us, the holy name and the society, and let's not forget prasadam, that's coming up, I believe, that he attracted just a whole generation of devotees who, at least for some time, are giving their entire lives for this that's going on. So the society is a big thing. Purity is the force. Let's see what he says here. In particular, we may note that Prabhupada never compromised his principles. The standard Vedic discipline requires one strictly follow 4 basic rules: no gambling, no intoxication, meat eating, illicit sex. When Prabhupada first arrived in America, he saw for himself the high fever of Western materialistic life. He thought, who will agree to these rules? As soon as I mention them, everyone will go away. Actually, what he said, I mean, he may have said that, but he said, they will tell me to go away. He said, get out. Says, I heard him say it on the tape. But, never seeking to become popular by catering to the public taste, he always insisted that his disciples adhere to these basic rules for spiritual purity. His mission was to present the right medicine for the materialistic disease, even though the medicine might at first seem a little bitter. So the idea is that, you know, when the whole movement started, and even today, it's not like the first thing you say every time you speak in a public forum is, by the way, these 4 rules, you know. No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication and illicit sex. Anyone who's into this, get out. You know, because that's what everyone is doing. So the first thing is to get people to chant, to hear and to chant, take prasadam. And then, gradually, that's why it's initiated devotees have to follow those things. Everyone should follow that, but to be initiated and to really make a substantial advancement, then these are necessary. So this is, you know, another gift of Prabhupada, uncompromising. Because it's much easier to get many, many followers if you compromise. And we've seen, you know, thousands or even millions of them. But what's the substance? They're being misled. Because the whole problem in this world where we're conditioned is we're so absorbed in these pleasures of the body and the mind, and these things are like most pleasurable things. They're extreme pleasures, but that means they're extremely sinful also. So that has to be curbed. And along with the chanting, if one is chanting sincerely and practicing, then he can get the spiritual strength to follow these things because you're getting the higher taste. If you're getting that higher taste, then these things are possible to follow. Temples around the world. In the context of his international society, Prabhupada, in a brief span of 10 years, established more than 100 temples of Krishna consciousness in 36 countries, which is like, it's mind-boggling actually to think what he was able to accomplish. And he always would say, yes, this is just Krishna, you know, working through me, and he can work through you also, and that's how you can accomplish things you could never imagine. I remember I was in the Brooklyn Temple on Henry Street where I joined, and there was an order that went out, which I later found out that you know, there was, let's face it, you know, angelic young brahmacharinis, you know, and here's a lost, you know, single men walking into the temple. Of course they're going to be, you know, listen to him. So there was one who was named Mahara, who was one of the biggest collectors. And I think they were told, because they were on a mission to collect money to get the new temple in New York. You know, really, you had to have something in Manhattan at that time. Still, but anyway, even then. So we never did. We had, you know, we went to the Brooklyn, and we were sitting in Brooklyn, which was thriving. But so there was this whole mission to collect, and they were distributing books and everything. But at the same time, you know, they're looking at ways to. So I was just coming, and of course I became addicted to halwa, as many of us did. So I'm in the Sunday feast, and I'm taking my halwa, and here's Mahara, and she knows I'm chanting a little bit, and I'm reading the books, you know. You know everything belongs to Krishna, right? Right? You know, as I'm saying, yeah, I know. And everything belongs to Krishna. So, because I knew I had a job, so I must have some money. So I went back and I would do my morning program, you know, which was a little hatha yoga, and then a little meditation, pranayama, and then chanting my 2 rounds before my big poster of the Super Soul, which I got from the temple. And then I would go off to work. While I'm in my little drive, maybe 15 minutes, I'm singing Hare Krishna. And at work, I'm also in the hospital. I'm trying to project and cure the people with the holy name. I didn't know what I was doing. So anyway, the next time I sat down to chant before that Super Soul, all I'm hearing as I chant, I'm hearing the holy name, but the Super Soul is telling me in my mind, yes, it all belongs to me, it all belongs to me. So finally I said, well, what am I going to do? You know, 'cause I was at that point. So I emptied out my bank account. It was like $1,500, which is a lot in 1972. And I didn't give it to Mahara, but I gave it to Jadharani. So, and then later I learned, you know, I joined after that. I mean, after I did that, it was practically all over, you know, so I joined up. But later I learned that they had collected, you know, a couple of $100,000 in this way. And they wrote the Prabhupada about it. Said, okay, send it all, so we can get the Bombay Temple land and build the Bombay Temple. So this was money that they were going to, you know, get a place in Manhattan. You know, so, okay. So they were all surrendered. Okay, this Prabhupada wants, you know, let's start again. And they eventually collected. They were able to get the 55th Street Temple a few years later. So anyway, that's the way it was, and that's. You know, how Prabhupada was able to build those temples. I mean, Guru Kripa and company was collecting in Japan. We won't get into the details of how he did it. But here's a big plaque up there in the Krishna Balaram temple. You know, he collected $100,000 or something. So it was a very cooperative thing. And it was all because of Prabhupada, you know. In other words, it's his money. You know, if he wants to take the money from America and give it to India and build something in India, great. You know, let's go on chanting Hare Krishna. So temples around the world, I mean, it's generally said there were about 108 temples when Prabhupada disappeared. You know, some big, some small. You know, this temple was, well, this temple really didn't get started until 78. But SanDiego Temple down in 3rd and Thorn was a thriving temple. You know, of course, LA was world headquarters. Service to the deity, he describes how, you know, deity worship, setting that up, training Yamuna. I'm going to tell you, Yamuna's biography is incredible, describing her role in setting the standards in London and then in Krishna Balaram. She was in charge of setting that up. And you know, Prabhupada impressed, you know, cleanliness, the ultimate, and the regularity. And meanwhile, the art of cooking all this prasadam was being passed on, you know, from Prabhupada to his disciples, from them, you know, to each other. And that's a very important part of deity worship. So all these temples are so important to keeping us regulated and clean and providing a place where people can congregate and chant Hare Krishna in a pure atmosphere. So service to the deity, and of course spiritual food, prasadam is another gift. From the beginning, that was part of Prabhupada's program. You know, first kirtan in 26th Avenue, Prabhupada cuts up some apples and passes it out. You know, it's all prasadam, mahaprasadam. You know, people don't know, oh, no wonder why I'm so blissful. Oh, I have no idea why I'm so blissful, I'm going to come back. You know, and gradually he taught a few devotees how to cook, and he himself was cooking the first feast and handing them out. Oh, for a time machine to be back there with that. So prasadam, as we all know, is so essential in, and you know, when you think about it, we're reading the Nectar of Instruction every Monday morning, and I think we just finished that verse, Tadati Pratigandhi Guyamang Bhumte Bhoje Dechaiva, the 6 loving exchanges. And these are not just, you know, these are kind of standard in the world also. If you really like someone, you prepare their favorite dish and offer it to them, you know. And so that's part of bhakti, to do that for Krishna, you know, and to give the remnants. And by giving prasadam, Prabhupada was so insistent that people get prasadam, because it's an act of love, and it's something that, you know, will maybe draw them back into, you know, loving. And in itself, it's purifying, just to eat any prasadam, you can imagine. So that's another great gift to Srila Prabhupada. Festivals of transcendental life, you know. I mean, we always know there's some festival always coming up, right? I mean, we just had this incredible Govardhan Puja festival, and of course, you know, today is kind of a festival. It's a sober festival, but still, it's a celebration. And this draws so many devotees together, both in the temple and outside. You know, Jayananda Prabhu was famous not only for making the carts every year, but making so many devotees while making the carts. You may not know, some of you may not know, some of you may, how Jayapataka Maharaj became a devotee. It was Rath Yatra time in San Francisco. And I think he came down from Canada, if I'm not sure. But anyway, everyone was going through San Francisco in those days. You know, every young person wanted to see what it's all about, you know, check it out. So he's walking by the place, probably on that temple on the Golden Gate Park, Haight-Ashbury. And Jayananda's busy working on the carts, you know, and everything. So he sees Jayapataka and he's kind of looking inside, saying, "Hey, can you help me out with this?" You know? And I said, "Okay, sure." You know, that's everyone's so he's going in there, you know, "Can you use a screwdriver? Just hold this," you know, like that somebody. And meanwhile, he's preaching to him as it's going on. And by the end of that session with Jayananda, he was really interested in Krishna consciousness and came back, became a devotee. You know, that's how it works. Is that you just draw, because if you're really engaged, then you're blissfully engaged, and someone will be attracted by that and interested, and then hear you, and you know, this is how the movement expanded. So that's spiritual festivals are so important, and in this transcendental world, every day is a festival. In fact, Prabhupada designed the morning program so it would be like a little mini festival every day. All the chanting and the hearing, and there's the deities, and then the prasadam, you know, it's like that. That's what it's supposed to be. And evening is supposed to be. And then he says every town and village, yeah, so he had, this means that he sent sannyasis out traveling to different, you know, remote places where there are no temples. That's the idea that's going on. Science and art for purified senses. So this, these paintings that we see, I remember when the artists were not so expert, you know, and the first paintings, you look at the old Krishna book, you know, Prabhupada was so eager to have these paintings, because when he looked at those paintings, he saw, because they're painted with devotion, even without so much expertise, he saw the spiritual world. He called them windows to the spiritual world. And so he very much sponsored the artists, beginning with Jadharani. She was practically doing her artwork in Prabhupada's apartment at first. And gradually became a department. And I was in LA when Prabhupada was pushing this thing called the dolls. Dolls? What's dolls? Dolls means dioramas. A lot of the decorations here are kind of became possible because of what they developed in LA with what they call the Fate Museum, first American theistic exhibit. It's there now in the work. I don't know how many people visit it. But Prabhupada was pushing for it. He had Bhardraj, who was, you know, skilled artist, go to India and learn how to make these dioramas. Because Bhaktisiddhanta had huge displays. He had big festivals where they would show Krishna Lila, Gauranga Lila, and so many things in a diorama form. Diorama is kind of, you don't see it here, but these little friezes are the closest thing we have, where there's figures, you know, in one scene. Like this scene of Mother Yashoda tying Krishna. That painting itself has been used to make dioramas. Where you go to LA, I think they have one to wheel it in, and there's Krishna, you know, there's a form, a little sculpture. You know. So that's part of the art Prabhupada was pushing, and science, especially the last year. The Bhaktivedanta Institute, the only letter I got from Prabhupada, where he ordered me to go and work with the Bhaktivedanta Institute as an editor in 1977. I got that. So he was very, very eager to have that. And then next thing is these farm communities, where you get, you know, ideal family life can be lived out in the farm, depending on the cows and the land. You know, he so much favored New Vrindavan because that was the first farm, and there was so many grihastas there living in it. So Prabhupada really wanted that to be manifest as an example for people how to live, so simply and close to the land, without all of this artificial huge industry that just, as Prabhupada destroys the finer sentiments of life, you know, you can see. And then you have so many people who can't be employed. You know, why are all these homeless people? Because there's no jobs for them, and no job, no houses, like that. And you know, the capitalists, they said, yeah, that's great, we'll go with robots. We'd much rather do AI, artificial intelligence and robots, and we can fire all these guys. They're much more expensive. What's going to happen to them? In India today, the leader is like demonically closing down as much agriculture as possible. What's going to happen to the people? Move to Delhi, move to Bombay. 30, 40 million people living in one city. Most of them in these little hovels, you know. It's crazy. So Prabhupada said, no, you know, the Krishna conscious community can live simply, depending on land and the cows, and, you know, having so much peaceful life to chant Hare Krishna and prosecute your devotional life. So Prabhupada really wanted that ideal life in harmony. The mercy of Krishna in India, so he's describing the development of Indian Yatra, which has exploded. Most of ISKCON is in India now, in terms of devotees and temples. Gurukul, education, Prabhupada developed that. And the conclusion, I'll just read this couple of paragraphs. In many wonderful and varied ways, Srila Prabhupada worked to bestow upon the world the benediction of Krishna consciousness. Yet perhaps his greatest contribution was the personal change he brought about in the hearts of his disciples. The joy and purity of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, their dedication, and their freedom from sinful life, these are outward signs. But the inner gratitude each disciple feels to his spiritual master for having changed the course of his life is practically inexpressible. We can best echo the words of the great devotee Prahlad, who prayed to the Lord, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general people. But your servant, my spiritual master, kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve the transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service?" Srila Prabhupada factually rescued his disciples from the materialistic life of today's misdirected world and led them on the path back home, back to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, Srila Prabhupada himself has left this world and gone back to the spiritual world of Krishna. Yet although physically his divine grace is no longer with us, he lives eternally by his instructions, by the movement he began, and by the memory of his personal example of how to serve Krishna in unalloyed love and devotion. So, any further remembrances or comments? We'll have more opportunity this afternoon if someone has a little something to say. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just saying, there's another story about Jayananda that this devotee came to the temple there in San Francisco, in the back alley, and Jayananda was emptying the trash.
Yeah.
And he was so blissful. Later on, the devotee said, I became a devotee because I figured if the devotee putting out the trash is as blissful, how about everyone else?
He didn't realize he's blissful because he's putting out the trash. So, yeah, I mean, that's really the main attractive feature, you know, when you see devotees very happy, and and you yourself are maybe just ordinary, or maybe in a depression a little bit, or just trying to combat the material world. Then naturally there's a desire to find out, well, okay, what do you got? I mean, give it to me. In the 60s, it was, well, what drug are you on? And you say, well, that's not a drug. Well, give them the flyer, stay high forever. I mean, it's described like that. That Lord Chaitanya was intoxicated with love of Godhead and like that. So, but it's a drug, the Hare Krishna mantra and all of the vibrations and the process itself, that has no bad side effects. It just has good side effects, like liberation from birth and death. But the real goal of it, the substance of it, is the experience, even in this body, even in this lifetime. It's not you got to wait till after. Of a source of pleasure and satisfaction and meaning in the life that you can't have on the material platform. Everything material is totally meaningless. The whole thing is just it's a huge con game by Mayadevi. We think we're conning people and cheating them, but we're being cheated. And take this body as a self and happiness through the senses and all this. So, you know, the fact that Prabhupada could give us a means by even, you know, after an hour of chanting, I mean, just you can immediately experience it. There's actually a tangible experience of Krishna in your life is obviously revolutionary. It's meant to be revolutionary. But to maintain that and expand it and keep it going year after year, this is the challenge that we have. But we all have this direct connection with Srila Prabhupada through his books, through his movement, through everything else. Yeah, Balaram is going to give us something. Go ahead. There's no breakfast today, by the way. Okay.
Obviously, everybody knows you were initiated by Prabhupada, and then there's people like myself who weren't, you know, initiated by Prabhupada, but initiated by Prabhupada's disciple. So, what would you personally say to all the people like myself who weren't, you know, directly initiated by Prabhupada, and specifically, you could say the younger generation? What would you say to them? You could say the most important things for them to know in terms of, you could say, carrying on in Prabhupada's, you know, movement, you know.
Right.
Because that's a big thing, you know, within everybody's minds throughout the world, at least within some people's minds, the idea of carrying on
I know.
the younger generation and all that. Some advice.
Well, the transcendental fact is that, you know, Krishna certainly, and his pure devotees, those who are 100% with him spiritually, either on this plane or in a transcendental plane, they're not bound by time and space. Meaning that even though Prabhupada is not physically here, those who are sincerely serving him in any generation can feel his direct presence and his mercy and love by understanding his teachings and following them nicely, following the program, and serving. In other words, contributing to the mission. So the fact of the matter is that some of the devotees, like the Vijay Prabhu, who joined in 78, you know, but has been steadily, I just talked to him yesterday, he's in LA, and been steadily distributing and promoting book distribution all these years, is as intimately connected with Prabhupada as any of his direct disciples, in my view, because he's been doing that service, studying the books, meditating on Prabhupada's words. So that's what I would say, is that don't be disappointed. Read about Prabhupada's life. Like just yesterday, Bhakti Jamal Prabhu wanted to, you know, read the full account of the Jagai and Madai pastime. So where is it in the CC? Well, I knew it wasn't in detail in the CC, but I found a little paragraph of summary. But you know, I went to my Chaitanya Bhagavat, which is available to everybody if you want it, PDF. And it has a wonderful commentary by Bhakti Siddhanta. It's all in English. I mean, the Bengali is there in English. And I reread that pastime, and it was just like, it was so moving. I mean, it was like, you know, you're right there. You're right there. I mean, really, we should have a play of that pastime, because they've done that before. But the point is that happened 500 years ago. But because, you know, if you're focusing on it, you're drinking, you're respecting it, and you're meditating, you can have the benefit in any generation. 500 years from now, you could read it, you know, in all languages, and because it's absolute. So the same thing is true of Prabhupada. Now, every day we sing Prabhupada's Guru Puja. There will always be Prabhupada's Guru Puja in ISKCON for 10,000 years. And what one of the lines there, you know, it's really good if you can spend a little time and study what those Bengali words mean. Shri Guru Charana Rati Aise Uttamagati Ye Pasare Puri Sarva Asha. Which doesn't exactly come out in those in a complete translation in what we say, but what it means there is Shri Guru Charanat Aise Uttamagati, that the supreme gati, or means of reaching the goal, is love for the lotus feet of the Guru. So in this case, Srila Prabhupada, your own Guru, Guru Tattva, but Guru person also. That's the thing. And at Ye Prasadi Purusava, because by his mercy, all your aspirations will be fulfilled. Your spiritual aspirations will be fulfilled. So that we sing every day to Srila Prabhupada. How to get, attraction for Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet? You got to read about him. You got to hear. We have so many books, Lilamrita of course, but many others. How and if you serve the mission, you read the books, you hear the voice, you hear the kirtan. Prabhupada is present now, in many ways, more than he was when he was physically on the planet. I remember when I joined, we'd always hear Prabhupada in the hall. They would always play some tape, He's always there. And there was always where Prabhupada said, to get letters, this and that, So, but now we have so many more books, all the recordings available to everyone, the Veda base is there, all the writings, everything is there. So if we take advantage of it, we can feel, and we follow Prabhupada's instructions, which are the same as they've always been, we can feel his presence in our life. We can have this meaningful relationship. And through your own spiritual master, he'll encourage that as much as possible. Genuine spiritual master in this movement means a real follower of Prabhupada. And so every spiritual master will be absolutely ecstatic to know that you're studying Prabhupada's books in his life and you're feeling close to him. Because that's what he's doing. That's why he's the spiritual master. So that's what the advice I would give them, is that don't lament that you never met Prabhupada, because that's something that'll always be there, that, why couldn't I have met? But that's good. That means that you want to learn more about Prabhupada and want to serve and enter, seriously into the mission. So the relationship can always be there. And there are so many devotees, who've had dreams of Prabhupada coming to them. Even like ordinary people. They finally see a devotee in the book. This has happened. I can't tell the time and place. So that's him. They see the book on Prabhupada's picture on the book, say the Bhagavad Gita. And the devotee said, "What do you mean? He's been coming to me in a dream for months and telling me, buy my book. I had no idea who it was." Yeah, this happens. That's extraordinary. But the point is, Prabhupada is still active. He's totally with us, on the transcendental plane, looking over this movement, probably hitting his forehead sometimes, saying, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" Have to make a special arrangement. So that would be my advice. Take advantage of everything we have that can put you in touch with Prabhupada. Read his words, follow his instructions, and you feel safe and protected. Okay, I think we should end now and reassemble at 10 to 12 for a Pushpanjali for Prabhupada. Somebody needs to make a lot of petals, because we're going to need some at 5 o'clock too. So that's the only thing I have to worry about. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.